My name is Malik. For over 15 years, I gave my life, my mind, my soul, and my sweat to Golden Pharmaceuticals. I wasn't just an employee, I was the engine. I joined them when their office was no more than a cramped space in Maryland, with cracked walls and flickering lights, struggling to get NAFDAC approval and barely surviving the harsh tide of Nigeria's unforgiving pharmaceutical market. But I believed in their dream. And I believed in mine too. From day one, I poured everything into that company. When others saw just a struggling business, I saw potential. I stayed up late crafting proposals, networking with doctors, hospitals, and distributors. I knocked on doors, shook hands, and made promises. Some days, I spent more time with clients than with my own family. I didn't just bring in customers, I built relationships. I made people trust the name Golden, not because of the brand, but because of me. By the 5th year, our monthly recurring client base had grown from barely 20 to over 1,000. And not just any clients, the kind that made phones ring on weekends, the kind who didn't flinch at 6-figure orders, the kind who made other pharmaceutical companies envious. People started noticing me. Nugent Pharmaceuticals, one of our fiercest competitors, had tried to recruit me more than once. I remember one of their reps saying, "Malik, you're worth more than they're paying you. Come build a legacy with us." But I declined every time. Loyalty, to me, was a badge of honor. Golden Pharmaceuticals was more than a job. It was my pride. My legacy. At least, that's what I thought. It was a Wednesday morning when the betrayal unfolded. The atmosphere at the office was unusually calm, too calm. I had just returned from a client visit in Ikeja and was preparing for our monthly strategic review when I got the summons. The CEO, Mr. Victor, wanted to see me in his office. Victor was a man I once respected. He is calculated, firm, but generally fair. He had called me his most valuable investment more than once in board meetings. So, when I received the message, I assumed it was business as usual. Perhaps a new expansion strategy, or a private appreciation for landing the Federal Medical Center account. But when I stepped into his glass-walled office, I saw it immediately. Something was off. He wasn't smiling. His shoulders were stiff. And worst of all, his daughter, Nellie, sat quietly in the corner, flipping through a file. That was the first red flag. Nellie, who had just returned from the UK after completing her master's in international business. She had been shadowing me for weeks, asking too many questions. I had shared ideas freely, thinking I was mentoring the next generation of the company I helped build. Now I could see the pieces rearranging themselves like a cruel jigsaw puzzle. Victor cleared his throat. "Malik," he began, voice steady but strangely sterile. "You have been with us for so many years, and your impact has been immeasurable." I said nothing. I only nodded. He continued, "But I believe the time has come for you to seek new challenges, something fresh, something beyond Golden Pharmaceuticals." It felt like being punched in the chest while wearing a smile. I blinked once. Then twice. I tried to focus on his lips, but all I could hear was the slow thud of blood in my ears. "You're laying me off?" I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. Victor looked momentarily uncomfortable. "We're not laying you off. We're transitioning. Evolving. We want to inject new ideas, new energy." That was when Nellie finally spoke. "You've been the backbone of this company, Mr. Malik," she said with a faint smile, "and we are grateful for everything." I looked at her. Her words were perfectly rehearsed. Smooth. Sterile. "And who will take my place?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Victor hesitated. Then, without blinking, he said, Nellie will be stepping in as the new business development director. You've mentored her well. I should have stood up and shouted. I should have slammed something. But I didn't. I just sat there, stunned, swallowing the bitterness as it rose from my chest. I see, I said finally. Victor quickly added, we'll ensure your severance package is generous. You've earned it. How do you price 15 years of loyalty? How do you quantify the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the family moments missed? I nodded again, though I wasn't really nodding. My body was just reacting while my soul recoiled. I stood up. Is that all? Victor looked at me, perhaps hoping I'd beg, or question, or protest. Yes, he said. I left the office, walked past the desks I had helped arrange, past the interns I had trained, past the executives who knew I was the true heart of Golden. None of them looked at me. Maybe they knew. Maybe they didn't. I got into my car, turned the ignition, and sat there for 15 minutes without moving. That night, I didn't speak a word to my wife. I barely touched my food. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, and thought about every sacrifice I made for that company. And then, somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m., I made a vow. They want to see what I'm capable of. Fine. I'll show them. But not through anger or chaos. Through strategy. Precision. Revenge, carefully measured and executed. The morning after the layoff, Lagos sounded different. The usual chaos, blaring horns, street hawkers shouting, downfall drivers cursing, felt muted to me, like I was watching the city from behind thick glass. Something had shifted inside me. The Malik who once believed in loyalty was gone. In his place stood a man quietly sharpening a blade beneath a calm smile. I woke up, dressed as if I was going to the office, and sat in my study instead. My wife, Aisha, watched me from the doorway, her expression unreadable. She had always known how much that company meant to me. She also knew, without needing to ask, that I was planning something. I opened my laptop and began going through my client list, not Golden's list, my list. The people I had brought in, the relationships I had nurtured, the names I could dial right now and hear warmth on the other end of the line. Doctors. Procurement heads. Hospital administrators. Government health officials. They didn't follow Golden Pharmaceuticals, they followed me. That was my quiet advantage. My greatest weapon. Over the next week, I replied to emails from well-meaning clients who had heard of my departure. Some expressed shock, others disappointment. But most had one question: where are you going next, Malik? I didn't answer directly. Not yet. Because I was still watching the board. Then the email came. Subject line: dinner invitation from the desk of the CEO. It was from NewGen Pharmaceuticals. And not just from their HR or marketing heads, this was from the CEO himself, Mr. Kenneth. He had been trying to recruit me for over a decade. Every few years, a new offer would come, always more enticing than the last. But I had always declined. This time, though, I didn't hesitate. I accepted the invitation. The dinner was scheduled for a Friday evening at his Ikoyi residence. A quiet, luxurious duplex that overlooked the waters. When I arrived, the man greeted me like a long-lost brother. Malik, he said with genuine warmth, they finally let you go. Their biggest mistake. Our biggest opportunity. We sat, shared grilled seafood and aged whiskey, and talked, not as rivals, but as equals. I won't insult you with a small offer, Kenneth said halfway through the meal. We've studied your impact at Golden. We know the clients you brought in. We want that. We want you. He didn't stop there. I'll match your highest salary at Golden, then double it. But more importantly, I want to give you something Golden never did. Equity. A stake in NewGen. I tried not to show how those words hit me. At Golden, I had asked twice to be made a partner. I wasn't even asking for much. Just recognition of the years I had given. Both times, Victor dodged the request with corporate excuses. Let's review at the next board meeting. Let's revisit next year. But Kenneth wasn't offering delays. He was offering keys. Still, I didn't jump. I looked him in the eye and said, "Let me think about it." He nodded respectfully. "Take all the time you need." But in my mind, the decision was already made. The storm had begun. Quietly, but deeply. I wasn't just going to join NewGen. I was going to revive it. I would breathe life into it the way I did Golden, and every move I made would carve away what Golden had built. One email at a time. One client at a time. This was no longer about a job. This was now about legacy. About justice. About revenge. I spent the weekend in quiet meditation. Not the type that involved incense and chants, but the kind that required spreadsheets, timelines, and silence. My study was filled with the soft hum of my laptop fan and the occasional clicking of my pen. I wasn't just preparing to accept NewGen's offer, I was preparing a strategy plan for when I arrive at NewGen. By Monday morning, word had spread like dry Harmattan fire. Industry insiders were buzzing. Sales reps were whispering in clinics. Procurement officers were reaching out. I knew what they were thinking. Where's Malik going? It's funny how your value is never clearer than the moment you leave. For years, Golden Pharmaceuticals basked in the illusion that their strength was in their product catalog, their branding, their sleek presentations. But now that I was gone, they were beginning to realize I was the product. And they were losing the clients I built, one by one. I received a call that Monday afternoon. It was from Dr. Ben, Chief Medical Officer at Southern Cross Clinic in Suralia, a major account I had secured 8 years ago. "Malik," he said, his tone firm. "We've worked together for almost a decade. If you're leaving Golden, let me know where you're going. I'll instruct our admin to terminate our purchase order with Golden immediately." That's when I knew the switch was already happening, even before I made a move. And I wasn't alone. Calls like his came in back to back: LUTH, Royal Healthline Group, Benson Medicals, and even a private hospital in Abuja that only did business through my personal recommendation. These weren't just clients. They were relationships. They were loyalty, and over handshakes and long conversations. By Wednesday, I sent Kenneth a text: "Let's meet. I'm ready to talk." We met again, this time in his office on the 15th floor of NewGen Towers in Victoria Island. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, but my eyes were fixed on the long, polished table between us. He didn't speak much. He knew the offer was solid. "I accept," I said. He leaned back and smiled. "Welcome to NewGen, Malik." Within an hour, I had signed my contract, Business Development Director, with a generous equity stake and complete control over onboarding legacy clients. And just like that, the game shifted. NewGen, once a respectable contender, was now becoming a predator. And Golden, once an empire, had started to wobble. But I wasn't satisfied with a new desk and a better salary. That was just the beginning. What I wanted was proof that betrayal has consequences. Proof that some people are irreplaceable. And Golden Pharmaceuticals was about to learn that lesson the hard way. It didn't take long. The industry thrives on whispers, hallway murmurs at medical conferences, subtle notes exchanged between procurement heads, coded WhatsApp messages that mean more than they say. And when the news broke that I had officially joined NewGen Pharmaceuticals, it spread like oil on water. They didn't announce it, but people talk. By Friday, my LinkedIn was flooded with connection requests and quiet congratulations. Some were genuine. Some were attempts to stay close to a man who now held influence in both legacy and innovation. But a few, especially the ones from former colleagues at Golden, were dripping with silent curiosity. I ignored them all. The most striking sign of the shifting winds came during a routine visit to a hospital in Yoba. I walked in with NewGen's sales team, clean, composed, but quiet. I wasn't there to talk, just to observe. But as soon as we entered the reception area, the procurement officer, Mrs. Adebayo, looked up and froze. Then she stood and came around her desk, beaming. "Malik, you didn't tell us you had moved." I gave a small smile. "It wasn't a public event." She laughed. "Golden sent someone here on Tuesday. A young lady. Said she was replacing you." I told her, "Until I hear from Malik, I'm not reviewing any contract." She ushered us into her office. My team took the lead, but I didn't miss the glances, the way people deferred to me, not because of my new position, but because of old respect. That was the pattern everywhere. By the second week, I had counted 19 major Golden clients who had either frozen their contracts or outright moved to NewGen, most of them personally calling me to request onboarding terms. And still, I kept quiet. No interviews. No press statements. No social media drama. I didn't need noise. The work was speaking loudly enough. It was around this time that I received a call, one I had expected, but still paused when I saw it. Victor calling. For a moment, I stared at the screen, watching his name flicker with the rhythmic buzz of my phone. The man who had dismissed me like expired inventory was now reaching out. I answered. "Malik," he said, with forced warmth. "Good to hear your voice." "Same here, sir." He hesitated. "I heard you're considering an offer from NewGen." I won't lie, it caught me by surprise. I didn't respond. Silence is a language too. After a pause, he said, "What would it take to bring you back?" It took everything in me not to laugh. "What makes you think I want to come back?" I asked, my tone controlled. "You were a vital part of our success," he said quickly. "Perhaps we misjudged things. I'm willing to renegotiate. We can offer you a revised role, higher salary, even a board position." I closed my eyes, savoring the moment. This wasn't about compensation. It was about dignity. Respect. Something I hadn't been given when they pushed me aside for his foreign-trained daughter. "I'm not coming back to Golden, Victor," I said flatly. "I've closed that chapter." There was a long silence on the line. I could hear the air leave his lungs. Then I ended the call. Not out of spite, but out of closure. He needed to feel what it meant to lose something he thought was replaceable. As the days rolled on, the whispers turned into full conversations. Clients were emailing us directly. Suppliers were requesting new partnership terms. Hospital directors were asking for meetings with NewGen. Golden was wobbling. And I was just getting started. The call came on a Tuesday evening, just after I returned home from a business dinner in Lekki. The children were already asleep. Aisha was curled up on the sofa reading, but as soon as she saw the name flashing on my screen, she paused. Barrister Olitunde. He is the legal counsel for Golden Pharmaceuticals. I picked up the call with no emotion. "Mr. Malik," the voice said. Slick. Cold. Calculated. This is Barrister Oletunde, Head of Legal for Golden Pharmaceuticals. I trust you're doing well. I didn't reply. I simply waited. He continued. We have observed some disturbing patterns over the past 3 weeks. Several of our long-standing clients have terminated their contracts following your departure. We have strong reason to believe you are deliberately targeting Golden's clientele in violation of your fiduciary duty and post-employment conduct clauses. He paused, probably waiting for me to panic. I didn't. Let me stop you there, I said calmly. I never signed a non-compete clause. And you know that. I was never offered shares. Never made a board member. Never given any retention agreement. So you have no legal leg to stand on. There was silence for a bit. Then, he dropped it. If these defections continue, we will be forced to take legal action. You'll be receiving a letter from our office before the end of the week. I smiled. Not because I was amused, but because this was the first real sign that the fire had reached their doorstep. I look forward to it, I said. Then I ended the call. Aisha looked at me with raised eyebrows. Was that who I think it was? I nodded. They are trying to threaten me into backing down. She folded her arms. Are you worried? No, I said with quiet finality. They are afraid. That's all. 3 days later, the letter arrived, just as he promised. A 4-page document filled with veiled threats, accusations of client interference, and citations of ambiguous labor laws. I handed it to our legal team at NewGen. They laughed. Typical corporate scare tactics, one of the lawyers said. They have no grounds. If anything, this will make them look even more desperate. And desperate they were. That same day, I received a message from Nellie, the very person I had trained to replace me. It was a short email. Almost too polite. Mr. Malik, I hope this finds you well. I'm reaching out to ask if we can meet. Off the record. I'd like to talk, sincerely. I stared at the screen, letting the irony sink in. She had shadowed me. Learned from me. Benefited from the systems I created. And now that those systems were falling apart in her hands, she wanted my advice. I didn't reply. Golden's foundation wasn't crumbling, it was collapsing. Procurement managers who once sang their praises now refused to take their calls. Suppliers complained about unpaid balances. I even heard that 2 of their senior sales reps had resigned and applied to join us at NewGen. It was a free fall. But I didn't gloat. Revenge isn't about loud victories. It's about quiet consequences. That night, I stood by the window of my bedroom, watching the flickering lights of Lagos. This city had taught me everything: how to fight silently, how to rise without making noise, and how to strike without swinging wildly. Golden had written me off. Now, they were rewriting their prayers. And I was no longer just a former employee. I was a force. It was a Monday morning when I walked into NewGen headquarters and noticed the difference. People were standing taller, moving faster, speaking with intention. The staff greeted me with respect, not fear. Admiration, not protocol. Something had shifted. Something was rising. And I was at the center of it. Kenneth, the CEO, had been generous with his words when I first joined, but now he was purposeful with his actions. He moved his office 2 floors down so we could collaborate more closely. I had his direct line. His full trust. He even gave me a private wing, 2 large offices, one for my work, the other for quiet meetings with clients or regulators. It wasn't just a position. It was power. And I intended to use it wisely. By the second month, my influence at NewGen had become undeniable. Sales had surged. Strategic partnerships were forming. We had signed 7 new hospitals, 5 of which were former Golden accounts. But we weren't chasing shadows. I wasn't just trying to beat Golden anymore. I was building something new. Something better. Our team created client loyalty programs based on the very frameworks I had drafted. We restructured the sales territory grid, retrained the field officers, improved delivery timelines, and launched a pilot digital ordering system that blew competitors out of the water. And the industry noticed. One afternoon, as I stepped into a client's boardroom in Ikeja, the director turned to his team and said, "Gentlemen, this is Malik, the man who changed the landscape. Whatever he brings, we sign." Golden Pharmaceuticals filed a formal complaint with the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, (NAFDAC), accusing NewGen of unethical poaching practices. It was laughable. They claimed that I had stolen proprietary data and lured clients using confidential materials. But when the agency reviewed the complaint and demanded evidence, they had nothing concrete. Nothing legal. Just resentment. Kenneth called me into his office that evening. "Malik," he said, pouring 2 glasses of Glenfiddich, "you've stirred something far bigger than I anticipated." I took the glass. I didn't stir it. I just stopped pretending I owed silence to betrayal. He laughed. "Well, cheers to that." We clinked glasses. That was my turning point. I was no longer the man who gave years to a company that didn't value him. I was no longer an employee hoping for recognition. I was now the architect of a new legacy. One built not on bitterness, but on brilliance. Not on vengeance alone, but on vision. Golden Pharmaceuticals had wanted me gone. Now, they were wishing I had stayed. It was poetic. Golden Pharmaceuticals, the empire I had labored to build, was now bleeding publicly. Not just quietly in offices or behind closed boardroom doors, but in ways even the media could no longer ignore. Their biggest distributors had defaulted on renewed supply contracts. Their Abuja branch lost 3 of its top medical reps. An internal memo leaked, showing that their monthly revenue had dropped by nearly 43% in just under 3 months. Revenge is most powerful when it moves in silence, then echoes in thunder. By the time our 7th NewGen client onboarding event took place at Eco Hotel, we had over 600 medical professionals in attendance. Our invitation list had started modestly, but word of my name being attached to the event spread like wildfire. That night, as I stood at the podium to give my address, I looked around and saw faces I had once shaken hands with under Golden's banner. They were all here now. Smiling. Nodding. Signing new papers. Days later, I got a message. "Malik, I know I don't deserve to ask for this, but can we meet? Victor." At first, I ignored it. But something in me, curiosity, maybe even closure, made me reply. "Tomorrow. 12 noon. The Orchid Room. Eco Hotel. 1 hour." The next day, I walked into the Orchid Room 5 minutes early. Victor was already seated. He looked older. Not in years, but in spirit. The lines on his face seemed deeper, his suit slightly looser, his confidence clearly shaken. "Malik," he greeted me, standing. I nodded and sat down. He dove straight in. "I made a mistake." I said nothing. I was under pressure. Nellie, she had just finished her program, and I felt she needed to be groomed into the company. "I thought you would stay on in another capacity." "I didn't imagine," he stopped. "You didn't imagine that I would leave." I finished calmly. He looked down. "I didn't think your departure would matter this much." That sentence told me everything I needed to hear. You didn't think I mattered this much, I corrected him. You thought the client stayed because of your building, your policies, your title. You forgot why they stayed. He opened his mouth. Closed it again. I came here, I said, not because I wanted to hear an apology, but because I wanted you to see the face of the man you underestimated. He swallowed hard. Is there any scenario in which you'd consider coming back? As a partner. Full autonomy. We can rebuild together, I stood up. I've already rebuilt, I said. Only now, I'm building for people who see me. He looked like he might plead again, but I turned and left before he could. There are moments in life when you realize you've won, not because your enemy is destroyed, but because they finally see your worth too late. This was one of those moments. As I stepped out of the hotel into the blinding Lagos sun, my phone buzzed with a message from NewGen's operations team. New onboarding complete. All 37 transferred clients successfully integrated. Quarter forecast, 64% above target. I closed my eyes briefly and exhaled. This wasn't just vengeance. This was justice. Clean. Precise. Irrefutable. Golden had chosen to cut off its right hand. Now it was learning how hard it was to write its future without me. I had just wrapped up a strategy session with the NewGen board when I received the email. Subject: Golden Pharmaceuticals Limited vs Malik Bello and NewGen Pharmaceuticals. From High Court Registry, Lagos State. They'd gone through with it. Golden Pharmaceuticals had officially filed a civil suit against me and my new company, alleging intellectual property theft, client poaching, and corporate sabotage. The 43-page complaint was thick with legal jargon and desperation. But what struck me most was the timing. They waited until the quarter's earnings report was made public. NewGen had just posted its most successful quarter in 8 years, largely because of the new accounts I had brought in. That news had made headlines. So Golden struck out, not for justice, but for survival. Kenneth called me into his office almost immediately. "They are bluffing," he said, sliding the document across his desk. "Trying to scare us. Maybe stall our momentum." I read it carefully, page by page. There were no non-disclosure agreements I'd violated. No signed non-compete. No evidence of stolen data. Just loud claims built on emotion. "They are crumbling," I said simply. "They don't want to win. They just want to stain." Kenneth leaned forward, voice calm but razor sharp. "Let's show them what clean war looks like." Within a week, our legal team fired back. A formal countersuit was filed, this time for defamation, emotional distress, and attempted career sabotage. We had documentation to show that several clients had come to us, not the other way around. Some even agreed to testify if necessary. Emails, call logs, testimonies. The kind of evidence that silences courtroom drama in a single hearing. But we didn't stop there. We sent copies of the legal response to major stakeholders in the industry, pharma regulators, client partners, and the Lagos Chamber of Commerce. We attached the accusations Golden had made, our rebuttals, and the truth. Within days, Golden's reputation took another blow. This time, not just from losing clients, but from losing credibility. The Lagos Pharmaceutical Regulation Council issued a statement: "While competition in the marketplace is normal, we urge companies not to weaponize legal systems for personal retaliation. Such actions tarnish the industry's integrity." That statement wasn't vague, it was surgical. Everyone knew who it was aimed at. Then came the hearing. Victor showed up in court with 3 lawyers and a briefcase full of smoke. I worked was with the NewGen's legal team and 2 client representatives who had volunteered to speak. The hearing was short. Golden's lawyers argued intent and damage. Our team presented facts and consent from the transferred clients. The judge didn't even need a recess. Case dismissed. Victor didn't look at me on the way out. He couldn't. Not with the cameras catching his every blink, not with his board waiting for him outside, and certainly not with his empire hanging by a thread. That evening, back at NewGen, Kenneth raised a glass in the executive lounge. To silence, he said. We drank. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about courtrooms or contracts. This was a funeral. A quiet one. For a company that could have lasted forever, if only it had valued the people who gave it breath. If you enjoyed this story, kindly like and share it. Subscribe to this channel and tap on the notification icon to enjoy and get notified when a new story drops every day.